enter the DeathGarden.
DeathGarden was an asymmetrical horror first-person shooter, hide and seek, cat and mouse game. Even with just describing the game, I think we run into its first problem, its identity. What is this game supposed to be besides Dead by Daylight with guns? Okay, let me try that again. Dead by Daylight without the horror elements. Yeah, Dead by Daylight without the horror elements that gave the game its identity, which I'm going to be referring to as DBD from now on to save some time. Before any of you click off this video, no, this is not a video essay on why DeathGarden, the game you may have heard of in passing or saw and thought, meh, failed, or what made it good and an entertaining game. No, this is not that video. This video is how that reception of that game and its choices impacted Dead by Daylight's game balance and development. But I do think it's important to cover a few things about DeathGarden to paint the picture of what actually happened and why I think this game had such an impact on DBD going forward. So, DeathGarden, the asymmetrical game, was a 5 scavenger versus 1 hunter cat and mouse game, much in the same vein of DBD's 4 survivors versus 1 killer style, where instead of fixing generators to power an exit gate, you collected blood from fountains and delivered them to various obelisks or towers across the map to power the exits. Although many details being different and quite unique to one another, the gameplay loops are about the same. In the arena, finish the objective, open the escape, and try not to die in the meantime. Or, from the hunter/killer side, stop the other players from escaping. Simple, right? Right. Well, that's probably what Behavior must have thought when they developed DeathGarden in 2018. We made the most successful asymmetrical horror game on the market ever? Why not do it again? Well, they tried, but the main reason you don't hear about this game anymore is, well, on August 12th, 2020, the game servers were officially closed forever. If the people behind DBD weren't able to make this game work, then what happened? A few things, but the big two that will have the most importance in this video will be style and casual balance. DeathGarden's lack of drawing power and forgettable identity was probably the biggest nail in the coffin, to be sure. Me being quite a decent fan of the game for its lifespan, can't even recall the names of any of the characters, only quite grasping at the hunter who is kind of like the Wraith, but I hate him, and a hoodie dude who kind of looks like Star-Lord, and the girl with the face mask on the back of her head. I'm sure a few of you will know the names of these characters, but there lies the issue. Only a few of you. When it comes to Dead by Daylight, even being a casual player, seeing the game in passing, you'll recall characters from the game. They may mainly have been killers, but my point still stands. Bubba, Michael Myers, the Trapper, the Huntress. They have a presence in the mind of people because they have an unforgettable identity behind them. And I am aware that with Michael and Bubba, they are horror icons that have personality and stories that have no real association with DBD at all. They are their own thing that has nothing to do with the game itself. But I don't really think that's the point. The point is, people remember these characters and they love them and they think, oh yeah, there's that game where I could play against or as these iconic characters, and it's called Dead by Daylight? You're probably saying at this point that I'm rambling and this doesn't matter to DeathGarden and how it affected DBD's development, and I promise you, later in the video it will be very important to the point I need to make, so I just want to hammer this thought into your head so you can get where I'm coming from. Anyways, people remember this game because of these iconic characters for the sole reason that they exist and they are present in this game. The only memorable character in DeathGarden was the Terminator DLC they added. Yes, the Terminator. And no, not Arnold. Rather, the skeleton of the T-800. And I hate to say it, but no one really cares about the skinless version of the Terminator. People, when they think of the Terminator, will always think first of Arnold, not the skeleton beneath. And that is a crucial difference between the licenses used in DBD and DeathGarden. You're getting the first subconscious image of Michael in your head, and that's exactly what you get in DBD. not the offshoot for the diehard fans who really care about the series. But even a lot of the original characters from the game are designed to be memorable and interesting. Even if they are just spin-offs of already pre-made characters, and you'll remember them. And with a game that bases a lot of its appeal off how you're feeling and how you enjoy the themes and the characters, that is important. Now let's talk about the setting. DeathGarden takes place in a dystopian future after a great war / global apocalypse has ravaged the world, leaving two social classes, the poor scavengers and the wealthy hunters. And in this sick game of cat and mouse where the scavengers are fighting to climb out of their social standing to a higher one in a combination of the Hunger Games meets Predator. While I think this is a cool premise to play around in, it's not exactly a new concept. Now let's compare that with DBD's setting. In a realm or realms controlled by an all-powerful dark being known as the Entity, it snatches beings from their world to compete in a life or death trial against other beings forced or coerced into doing the Entity's bidding. During this time, the cycle of life and death is endless, and hope is a diminishing flame being constantly consumed bit by bit until the flame is extinguished, making this entity stronger until it eventually consumes the entire cosmos. I did go a little bit more in-depth into DBD's lore than DeathGarden's, but I think it's justified as the stakes and the story is a bit more compelling and rich with emotion and fear and existential dread, where the simple tagline, "Death is not an escape," has a whole new level of despair and suffering that will never end. With DeathGarden, it all boils down to the point of the world sucks and people are greedy and evil, and some people are willing to put their lives on the line to make the jump to a higher social class that keeps them suppressed and suffering. Although they are victims, they're just playing the game to make their lives easier, and with Dead by Daylight, they're just trying to fight as long as they can and keep hope alive. DBD's themes are very much in the vein of early slasher horror, where simply a malevolent killer is hunting and murdering random individuals with no other reason besides they kill. A simple enough premise that people all over the world have fallen in love with and turned into one of the biggest genres of entertainment to ever be. A simple premise, recognizable and enjoyed by tons of people, but with the capability of deeper, more complex concepts and themes, it's far more marketable of a product than a shallow Hunger Games clone. Yes, I know Battle Royale came first, but a lot of people don't. You should watch the movie though, it's great. This is the main thing that got people interested in continuously playing Dead by Daylight. Every sound, every character animation gave the game style. If I had to pick a second reason for DeathGarden dying out the way it did, it'd be casual balance. I'm going to make a statement that might get a lot of flack and disagreement, but it's something I stand by after my many hours in these games. Most people playing these games are bad at them, but this is the most true for Survivor / Scavengers. Killers to some extent, but they are vastly outmatched by poor performance of Survivors. But I think this is fine. With these type of games, the skill ceiling is quite different than a lot of other games. And it takes a lot of time and investment on most people's parts to get the hang of it and be perfect at it. Although this is frustrating a lot of the time, it's understandable, and part-wise why I think a lot of people like myself can put tons of time into this game, because there's always something to get better at or try out. For such simple concepts, there's a lot of things to work out and play with in these boundaries. This is the key for one simple reason. DeathGarden's hunters were really good. Like, I'm talking insanely difficult to beat if the person knew how to use their tools and were observant. The game was far more fast-paced than DBD could ever be. A lot of chases being over in under 30 seconds. Whether it was escaping the hunter or being downed, chases that go over 30 seconds were rare and a true testament to either the low skill of the hunter or the tremendous skill on both sides. Since hunters have high mobility, long range, zoning, stuns, and revealing tools, a lot of scavengers had to play very, very smart to stand a chance, and had to use their tools at the right moment. This includes hiding at the exact moment, not using all your tools and tricks too early or wastefully during a chase. A lot of mind games and reads were all necessary for not immediately being downed and executed. The skill ceiling was a lot lower for hunters if the scavenger did not mind game. If they just kept running and heading one direction, even bobbing and weaving, they would lose quickly. Comparison to Dead by Daylight, most killers are stuck playing a straightforward style, chasing the person as they run. They get close, they hit, and they do it again, giving survivors at least a little bit of time to choose where they wanted to go and what they wanted to give up to extend a chase. Don't want to go down? Toss a pallet. They break the pallet, you drop another pallet. And although this may doom your team using a lot of resources early, at the very least, you were not defeated so quickly. Of course, there are exceptions to this in mind gaming and long-range killers and unsafe pallets, but for the most part, this is basically how the game is played. In DeathGarden, you could be dead within 5 to 10 seconds of the hunter seeing you. And if you don't notice them, you just feel like you were not even able to play the game. People might say mad cause bad and get good, but the simple answer is why would you want to play something that you're not having fun with? If you were so bad that you're constantly unable to even practice learning the game, you'll just shut it off and never pick it back up again. And if you did, it's most likely the same thing that would happen again. You would get destroyed and never play it again. People who were not good just stopped playing, and the ones who were good had less and less people to play with and were just forced into matches with these weak players, and they just destroyed them, and this caused the person to leave the player pool, even shrinking it even more. And thus, your player base dies off. Dead by Daylight was and is far less oppressive than this, giving survivors far more tools and second chances to not only try again, but win. Plus the fact that you have to go down 3 times rather than 2 in DeathGarden, a bad survivor against a bad killer still has a great chance of living, even just for the simple fact that there are 3 other people doing objectives. 3 chances is a lot for a killer who can't even get around to all the objectives in time, let alone get it down quick enough to suppress all 4. Even still, in low ranks, a lot of survivors lose far more than the killers do. It's not as bad as DeathGarden, so I think it makes people more likely to say, I'll give this one more shot. Maybe I can run the killer a bit longer this time. I would also say that people who were to play solo roles, such as Killer and Hunter, were probably the people who spent a lot more time with the game, and thus are probably better on average than the common survivor / scavenger. This being, if you don't know what you're doing, you're probably less likely to play the role where mistakes are punished far harder than if you were just, I don't know, playing with 3 other friends who could carry the load. So, with that, I brought the point of casual balance. How did DeathGarden affect Dead by Daylight's development, and why did I go in so much detail about their styles and casual balances? Well, let me tell you so we can finish this up. So when I was going over the style differences, we talked about how the appeal and the look was a mass hindrance to DeathGarden's growth and sustainability, while the complete opposite for DBD. It's grown and sustained an average player base, which on Steam says it's around 25 to 30k average, give or take a few K on any given day. I'm unaware of what the player numbers are on consoles, but just by going to Steam charts, it's quite commendable as a more niche genre game is keeping steady numbers over 4 to 5 years. It takes quite a few new faces being brought in to replenish the old ones that never return. I don't think Behavior is blind to this fact either, seeing how there's a huge focus on revamping the old maps and animations and character models and adding a vast amount of costumes and charms. They notice the look and the feel of the game as a huge driving force for getting and keeping players around. Another small point is in the new direction and expanding the lore of the DBD universe with the tomes that have been added 2 years ago. Of course, style will only get a game so far, so now we have the casual balance. During the time of DeathGarden, where the power role of the hunter had a vastly stronger grasp over the control of the game, Dead by Daylight was going through some improvements to Killer's powers within the game, making flashlight stunts harder to pull off, removing infinites, or at least tweaking them down, at least. and quite a few improvements and buffs to killers that were far more difficult to consistently win with. These changes were showing that behavior was aware that killers needed a bit of a power boost, and were adjusting to compensate. During this time, we saw gameplay balances to killers specifically that we don't see a lot of today. It's quite rare, and that's clean cut killer buffs. With a lot of changes to killers now being constantly adjusted rather than just a straight up buff given to their kit. A good example of this would be Wraith getting this Windstorm base in the recent patch, but them adding the little caveat of making him slow down a lot more when uncloaking. I'm not saying this is a bad thing for the game, but rather pointing out a lot of killer buffs are undercut with little nerfs to other parts of their kits, as a fear of a killer getting out of control in the player base is now a major motivation. See the recent gutting of Freddy. He had a high kill count. He had the highest kill count of any of the killers. He was debatably one of the best killers in the game, but it also could be argued that a vast amount of players just didn't understand how to play against him, leading to a lot of losses. And Freddy's recent balance change was quite drastic. I won't bore you with all the details, but basically everything about his kit was toned down, from the numbers of snares and fake pallets he could do, to the speed while setting his snares. Hell, Freddy's issue of borrowed time not working well in Dream caused the devs to make borrowed time work all the time, no matter if it was the killer being undetectable or not, causing one of the most played and useful perks to basically be always available. The hesitance to give buffs to killers without taking something else away while then nerfing so many aspects of the kits is very telling. In an interview with Matthew Cote, he said this.
Another question, playing killers was fun a long time ago, but now it's only stressful. But that's an opinion, a valid opinion, but that's an opinion. I used to love playing as a killer, win or lose, it was fun, but currently no matter what, it's just filled with stress and anger. Killers aren't feared anymore. Do you have any plans or ideas how you would like to improve the killer experience? Well, I would say maybe try Survivor for a bit. No, but it's true. I mean, change it up. Maybe you're just tired, or play something else for a week. Try Civilization or something, just for a refreshing change.
So this clip is memed to death, now almost as much as
I think we did a pretty good job so far.
most look at this and think he hates the killers, they don't care, they're survivor biased. And while I don't think that's necessarily wrong, I don't think it's the whole picture either, and not the perspective being looked at from the devs. They had a game they put quite a bit of time and money into, made the hunter a power role, something that would make survivor or scavenger a significant challenge. And from that, the game was basically dead on launch. After investing more time and more money into the game, it was relaunched under the name DeathGarden Blood Harvest, improving the objectives and making the scavengers stand a far better chance of escaping. Still weak compared to the hunter, but the matchup wasn't so unbalanced. But once again, after a week or so, after launch, the numbers were far too low. After trying a free weekend and promotional events and hunter nerfs, it just wasn't enough to keep the money pit that was DeathGarden alive, and then the game ceased development. After DeathGarden's demise, the game took a far harder turn into what they believe made it successful: the style. Focusing more on cool, appealing looks and concepts more so than balance or strength. Of course, we got good killers along the way. We never saw huge power imbalances like early Spirit or Nurse and, well, I suppose middle-aged Freddy. We saw the twins, a very cool sounding, very great concept, a great technical achievement. But it was way more style than substance, followed by the Trickster, which is basically all style over substance, with these two being seen as some of the weakest, if not the weakest killers to be released. That, of course, if you don't play the twins like a scum lord and slug everybody along the way. And Trickster being a very obvious play to bleed into the devoted K-pop audience. The message is clear. With the new emphasis on style over high-level gameplay, the devs are trying to attract as large an audience as possible and keep a cushion for all those new and casual players to keep them from disbanding from the game forever. But they haven't abandoned the old players. There is still constant gameplay fixes that make killers' lives easier, It's far behind the improvements for survivors, such as breakable walls and tweaking their perks. Is this for the best? Is appealing to a large casual audience better than trying to bridge the gap between the survivor and killer player balance? Or is trying to appeal to the veterans a smarter idea? I'm not here to say. I'm not here to shill either. Just point out some of the trends that I've noticed about the game and the connection with DeathGarden I can't help shake. I think it's ultimately up to all of you to decide whether this is the right direction for the game or not. Whether what they're doing is hurting the game or keeping it around. You people will vote with your wallets and your playtime. For me, personally, I love this game. I have my issues with it for sure, but it keeps me invested to the point where I'm making videos and writing essays about its development cycle on YouTube. So thanks to anybody still around at the end here. I appreciate you taking the time to let me talk and share some of my observations. Of course, if you disagree with anything I said here, just let me know in the comments. Who knows, my mind has been changed in the past to this game. Just try and be civil. I know that's asking a lot from some people in this community, but I just have to ask. Also, does anybody else think DeathGarden got a bad rap or got exactly what it deserved? Once again, let me know down below. One last plug. If anybody's interested in getting more in-depth lore analysis, or even my personal favorite, who is the protagonist of Dead by Daylight, I highly recommend a YouTube channel I discovered last month called Pixel Brush Entertainment. I have no association with them, but I think they deserve more love than they're getting right now, and they make some great lore videos. So, like, subscribe, watch some of my other videos. Goodbye, and I'll see you all real soon.
Dusteroo, Dusteroo.